Our speaker is a Supervisor Special Agent Marc Debrody. He's a Supervisor Specialty Agent. Marc Debrody is a 24-year-old veteran with the United States Secret Service and has nearly 27 years in law enforcement, serving previously with the City of Atlanta Police Department. Currently assigned to the Atlanta Field Office, Agent Debrody oversees the Cyber Fraud Task Force responsible for conducting computer related crimes investigations to business email compromise, ransomware, computer mobile forensics, and network intrusion data breaches investigation in his partnership with the task force. As one of the 40 cyber fraud task forces across the country, the Atlanta CFTF is comprised of over 400 local, state, federal law enforcement officers, members of private industry, and academia, each with a common goal of sharing information to combat crime against our nation's financial infrastructure. As a certified information security manager, CISM, Agent Debrody and his team regularly engaged industry partners to communicate best practice in cyber intelligence. So welcome, Marc, and I'm going to turn it over to you for your presentation.
Well, thank you, Ricky. I appreciate the invite. Good afternoon, everybody. Before I get started, I just want to first thank you all for what you do. I wouldn't be actually having this conversation or this presentation about these topics without Rotary Club. And just by way of a brief introduction, in high school, I grew up in the Peachtree Corners, Norcross, Georgia area. And I was a member of a club called Interact Club. And I don't know if you guys still affiliate yourselves with Interact. I see a head nod in there, Ricky. But I happened to attend a luncheon as a high school representative from Interact Club. And there was a police officer from Gwinnett County that was being awarded a presentation by the Rotary Club. And it was actually the first thing that got me hooked on law enforcement. And from there, I went on a ride along and kind of got hooked in law enforcement. So Rotary Club is responsible for me being here. So thank you for what you guys do. It's a great organization. And so it's an honor to be able to talk to you today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here in a minute. And when I do, my face will get a little smaller, and the presentation will take up a large portion of the screen. I'm not sure if you can adjust my face size, but that doesn't matter, I don't think, too much. So let me go ahead and do that, and give me 1 second here. And you guys should be able to see me, and Ricky, you can shake your head showing that you can see and hear good. Okay, we're good to go. So today, folks, what I want to talk to you about are the top cybersecurity threats that we see in Atlanta, but they're really, it's a global problem. They happen to be top security threats here in Atlanta. They affect everyone in this audience, quite frankly. I could talk for hours on each of these topics. But we only have about 30 minutes or so and to allow time for Q&A at the end. So I'm going to give you kind of a surface level overview of these threats. It's not going to be a technical presentation. This is for C-suite level folks on down. So I'm not going to talk a lot of technical jargon here. It's going to be very straightforward. In order to start, I want to give you a little background. Some of you may be scratching your head saying, why is the Secret Service even a part of this conversation? I mean, aren't you the guys with the earpieces and sunglasses? And that's true. But we also have a Secret Service dual mission. And it's one of the reasons why I got involved in Secret Service. I like the opportunity to do investigation protection. I did 12 years in the presidential detail with Clinton, Obama, and Bush, 43. I came back to Atlanta in 2013, to my home, obviously, and plan to retire here, if Lord willing. But I show this slide here to show kind of our background. This is me when I'm about 10 years younger on the left, when Bush was in Atlanta. I had no gray hair there, but that's our protective mission everyone knows us for. But ironically, we were an agency that actually started by the gentleman on the right, Abraham Lincoln. We started in 1865. He created the Secret Service, not for protection. And the cruel irony was he created the Secret Service on the day he was assassinated for the specific purpose of combating counterfeit currency in circulation during the Civil War. So the night he gets assassinated, he did not have Secret Service detail. It actually wasn't until 3 attempts or 3 assassinations, the third being McKinley, that we actually picked up protection full time. So we've evolved over the years, obviously moving from not just currency, but to cyber crimes, because that's how everything's done, including printing money now. We find ourselves engaged in the cyber world. We started doing computer-related crimes mostly after the Patriot Act was formed post 9/11, which gives us the authority to protect our nation's financial infrastructure, which is what we are primarily charged with here. Today's presentation is going to take you through to a couple of the top two threats we see: business email compromise and ransomware. And I'm going to throw in at the end a little cyber hygiene, just tools that you guys to remind you of to protect yourselves in these areas and others for both business and personal internet security. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right into business email compromise. And just to make certain we're on the same page, business email compromise is a spear phishing attack that focuses on tricking employees into wiring money into an attacker's bank account. And the spear phishing part is a phishing attack. It's an email phishing attack most of the time. And the spear phishing part means that the attackers are looking for specific people who handle money in organizations, or people who are involved in transactions that involve money, which oftentimes are real estate folks. Anybody involved in the real estate transaction should be wary, because we see a lot of BECs, business email compromises, in that industry. Construction's another one. Any place where money is transferred regularly, folks are targeted. To give you an idea of how big of a problem this is, this actually increased 600% in the time period of February to March of this year. And that's obviously due to COVID. These actors aren't doing anything different that they did in the past. They're just using a different bait. They're using what we call the COVID bait. And I'll show you an example of a phishing email that tries to lure someone into giving up their email credentials or bank account information. This is not a crime that targets weak people, people that are not intelligent. It attacks the intelligent and all kinds of people in between. Barbara Corcoran on the left there, you'll see an article. She recently, her real estate company was a victim of a business email compromise to the tune of about $380,000. Finance departments, we have this happen. I mean, our largest one in Atlanta, I think, was over $3 million that was wired out. And I want to just have a short aside to say, if you call us, if you are part of a company or you individually are a victim, if you call us within 72 hours, we have a really good chance of getting that money back, even if it goes overseas, which it often does. If you call us outside of that window, the money's most likely gone. And the problem is most victims are embarrassed. They don't want to reveal their secrets, or they're afraid the company stock may plummet if they notify law enforcement, what have you. But if you notify us, we definitely can work together secretly, putting the secret in Secret Service, and we can help assist you in getting your funds back. But it can happen to anyone. Business email compromise is so lucrative because it's anonymous. Criminals are capturing the results of all these data breaches that you've seen over the last 10 plus years, right? And actually, one happens almost, it seems like, every day. And we're almost, I know many people get numb to it. And when it first started happening, it was like, oh, a data breach, what do I have to do? Now it's like, oh, another data breach. The problem is that those data breaches contain information, your personal identifiable information, we call PII, name, email addresses, passwords, social security numbers, etc. And they all get dumped on what we call the dark web and sold and resold for criminals to use. Most people, unfortunately, reuse passwords. They use the same passwords that are stolen in a data breach for their bank account. And criminals capitalize upon that. They reuse passwords. They don't use two-factor authentication, which is basically having a PIN number. So when you log into your bank, for example, you get a text message with a PIN. That's two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. Folks oftentimes don't use that. So these criminals are capitalizing on that. In addition to these lists here, you are your own worst enemy in the sense that we put out what I like to call digital exhaust. It's the things that you leave behind every time you touch the internet. every time you go to a web page, every time you post on your company website something about yourself, in this case here, or on Facebook, your personal information, or on, and here's a great one, LinkedIn, as you see on the right, people like to post their credentials on LinkedIn. This is what we call cyber intelligence for criminals to gather and target you. And the more exhaust you have, the more likely it is that you can be targeted, especially if you are in a business that involves money transfers and exchange of money over email or wire. So I want to kind of pivot to what they do as their attack. On the left side of the screen here, you see a typical Office 365 login, or you'll see a link for an Office 365 login. In this case, it's OneDrive. It's a cloud-based storage platform. But Office 365 is actually, if many folks use it, maybe in this audience, is actually one of the most common attack vectors that criminals use to start a phishing attack. What happens is you'll get an email with maybe an attachment that is enticing. It maybe even appears from someone that you know, and you're given a fake login. You think it's the Office 365 login link. You click it, it appears as though it's login. You type in your email and password, it doesn't work. You think, I fat fingered it. I put the wrong password in. You type it again, then it redirects you to the actual website. And then, but in the meantime, what you didn't know was that was actually a false email link that the criminals use to capture your credentials, your login information. And once they have your login information, they can do all kinds of damage to your email and begin the series of steps that I'll show you of how they attack and steal your money. On the right side, you'll see a typical phishing email that appears to come from Bank of America. And I'm not picking on Bank of America if there's any BOA employees there. This could be any company. But a couple of things I've highlighted in this email that you may see come to you. Number one, in the from at the very top, you'll notice the email address. Now, it may say in the from box Bank of America, and that's all you read. But when you highlight your cursor, when you move your cursor above the address and it shows the expanded address here, like you see, you'll notice it says Comcast.net. Well, I got news for you. Comcast.net is not the BOA email address. And you would only know that if you hovered your cursor above the above the actual address. As you read this, you'll notice some other errors. Dear member, they don't address it like that. You may see font changes, like please sign in to your account in a smaller font. And then you'll see a link, which is actually the phishing email link that takes you to the malicious website where they try to capture information of bankofamerica.com. Well, again, when you hover your mouse over that link, you'll see the little, I drew it out, the actual link, which is not that same one. It takes you to the phishing. So these are what we call clues that should give you pause. And the problem is people don't take the time to pause and investigate emails, especially when they involve anything involving financial transactions or banks. This is an example that we saw recently of a COVID phishing email. I mentioned earlier the baits just changed. It's the emails that are coming out are now COVID related. They're very tricky. They're everything about them is on purpose. The timing they're sent of day, sometimes it's 5 o'clock on a Thursday or Friday, and there's a sense of urgency involved, and you feel like you've got to respond. Or maybe it's a Monday morning and you're sifting through a bunch of old emails over the weekend and you're clicking, you're happy clicking away. Here is another example of this happens to have I think it's a Ukrainian email, but you see the CDC website up top is actually not the CDC website. It's not gov.org, and same with the link. So again, paying a little attention, slowing down. They're appealing to people's sense of curiosity here to find out, what new cases of COVID are in your area. Well, who doesn't want to know that, right? So these are just a couple of tips and examples of how you can kind of prepare yourself to not become a victim here. There's one other way I want to talk to you about that folks are, trying to be creative in how they capture your information, and that is through what we call vishing, or some people it's voice phishing, social engineering. You may have heard it called as social engineering. The most recent Twitter attack that you may have heard about in the news was a combination of social engineering and other attack methods. It's not as common as a traditional phishing email attack, but it does happen. And I have a video here that was done at DEF CON out in Las Vegas that kind of shows how easy it is for someone to get information through a social engineering scam or phishing. So I'm going to show this, and hopefully we have audio. Ricky, just give me a thumbs up when this starts to play that we have some audio.
So I invited a few of the world's best hackers to try to hack me and show me where my vulnerabilities are. And now I'm going to meet them in Las Vegas for DEF CON, the biggest hacker convention of the year. They're going to hack me using social engineering, which is essentially hacking without any code. They just use a phone and an internet connection.
Do you want to do a sample phishing call?
What's phishing?
Phishing is voice solicitation, and basically what you do is you use the phone to extract information or data points that can be used in a later attack.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Who are you going to call?
Maybe I'll call your cell phone provider and see if I can get them to give me your email address.
I bet they're good. I bet they have my back. But yeah, go for it.
I'm going to spoof from your number, so it's going to look like it's calling from you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me okay? My baby, I'm sorry. my husband's like, we're about to apply for a loan and we just had a baby, and he's like, get this done by today. So I'm so sorry. I can't call you back. I'm trying to log into our account for uses information, and I can't remember what email address we used to log the account. The baby's crying, and can you help me? Awesome.
In just 30 seconds,
At gmail.com?
Jessica gets access to my personal email address.
Now, if I needed to add our older daughter on our account so she could call in and make changes, how would I need to go about doing that? You would have to send me a secure PIN through a text message? Yeah, well, the thing is, I don't think I'll be able to receive a text message if I'm on the phone. Oh, I'm not on there either? So I thought when we got married, he added me to the account.
Jess uses my girlfriend's name and a fake social security number
5127.
to set up her own personal access to my account.
Wait, I'm sorry. So there's no password on my account right now? Can I set that up?
She even gets the support person to change my password.
Thank you so much for your help today.
So she just basically blocked me out of my own account.
I'll get her fed after this. All right.
So folks, that's how easy it is. And that's obviously a professional there doing that, but that's how easy it is to get access to your information. When these actors, bad actors, get access to your email, and again, they've sent you an email via a phishing email that has you try to log into your webmail or what have you. They then steal your credentials. They steal your login name and your password because they've given you a fictitious site that you've clicked on. Once they have that information, they actually do a thing called rules and alert changing. They change the rules and alerts. And this is an example of an Outlook page. If you use Microsoft Outlook and you're a victim, you would have something like this showing in the rules and alerts. It would be an alert that you didn't set up that says, something to the effect of forwarding and then delete the emails. It's forwarding emails to the bad actor, and then it's deleting them after they sent, so you never even know about it. And what they're looking for then is actually looking for, once they have access to your email, they're looking for those transactions that have financial involvement, so they can then inject themselves in the conversation. And I'm going to actually show you what that looks like here in a second. This is an example. This is a series of slides that actually walks you through an email correspondence between a victim and a payee or a vendor. And we've highlighted, or we blurred out the information so we can protect the guilty here, innocent. But the first information that we have is an email. This is back in 2018 on a Wednesday of the victim is stating to the payee they're going to be sending money to the phone and to credit the invoice accounts, $40,900 there. Okay. The payee or the vendor responds back and says, "Hi, so and so, you're welcome. Have a nice weekend as well." Okay. The bad actor is already monitoring the emails from the compromised account, and they inject themselves into the conversation right here because they now know that money's going to happen. So now they inject themselves into the conversation, pretending to be the payee or the vendor. And if you read this, and some of it may be hard to read on your screen, but when you read it, you can pick up clues that it's just not right. For example, hello, please, our bank informed us that our account has been placed on hold because of a bad check was paid into it. This would make it impossible to process any incoming payments. We will be having a general audit over our accounts to figure if this had happened before. We would like to update our bank account information to receive payment and all other future payments effective immediately. Do I send it to you? Please advise. So the first sentence there was kind of bad English. And they're basically saying, hey, don't send it to the accounts, send it to our bad actor account, okay? But they don't know that. So the victim instructs the bad actor, okay, bad actor, go ahead and send, here's a new change of, here's a clearinghouse form that you have to fill out with your new account information. They're basically telling the bad guy, here, okay, give us a copy of a voided check, and send your information to us. And all the while they think they're talking to the actual payee or the vendor. This is what they ask the vendor, aka bad guy, to fill out. Bad guy fills it out and sends it back and says, please see our attached updated information. They actually attach a copy of the check. And here's where they kind of mess up. They don't notify, and you'll see this in a couple of slides in advance here, that the place is Detroit, Michigan, up the top center of the check, and it's Bank of America. They don't realize that that's not who the actual vendor uses. But here, the actual payee or vendor says, hey, we haven't received payment. I normally receive an email confirmation from you of the payment, and I didn't get that either. Could you check on that? And then the victim says, please see the attached for our updated banking account information. Did you send that request? You know, asking, but didn't you send that? And they say, no, we didn't send any of those emails. So now the victim's like, oh no, we just wired the money to, someone that's not the actual payee. And that's as simple. It's as simple as that. How these actors inject themselves into these transactions from compromised email accounts. So what do? I love this slide because the picture in the upper right of a phone is the technology piece that you need to prevent this from happening. It's called pick up the phone. And if you are in a company and you have any kind of control over procedures and policies, having a policy in place that instructs your folks when they're involving, financial transactions, or especially changes in accounts or things like that, to pick up the phone and verify that the person that's making the request in the email is actually who they say they are. Education is of course a big thing. I like to say, you're as strong as your weakest link in your organization with regards to cybersecurity. And oftentimes it's the 18-year-old intern that's sitting at the desk checking emails that has access to your network that didn't get that phishing training that they need and should have, and they become the weakest link. And we like to talk about how companies like to have fancy network intrusion systems and detection systems and all these technological advances to help minimize this, but ultimately boils down to what I call that 18-inch gap threat that's between the keyboard and the chair. The person in the chair, that's the biggest threat. And so you got to educate them, and you have to do it regularly. It's not enough to do it once a year. I recommend at least quarterly doing phishing training for employees. There's ways to reward employees for that through gift cards and things like that, and for those type of things. Having policies and procedures in place, and notifying, law enforcement. I know that's sometimes a sensitive subject, but we don't make press announcements when we get phone calls. I take a lot of phone calls that are I have a friend phone calls that was a victim. We don't have to open a federal case on everything that comes across our desk. So please feel free to call us, and especially if it happened within the last 72 hours, we'll do our best to facilitate getting your money back. I'm going to move now to ransomware. It's only a few slides, and then I'll move to cyber hygiene and take some questions. Ransomware is nasty, folks. This is a malicious software that's designed to basically seize up your computer system, make it inoperable or inaccessible until you or your company pay a ransom, a financial ransom. Here's a slide, a screen capture, maybe a little blurry because I enlarged it, of what a ransomware screen looks like once you've been victimized. You see a screen that looks something like this that says, "Oops, your files have been encrypted." You'll see a countdown clock of when payment needs to be raised by, and then when your files are last going to be accessible by. There's Bitcoin is how they tend to, Bitcoin or other cryptocurrency is how they tend to take payment, and you'll see a Bitcoin address for how you can make payment to get your money back. Ransomware is a huge problem. It's a $11+ billion problem in 2019. The average payment is allegedly around $111,000. That's average. I've had here in Alpharetta, I've seen over $2 million ransoms and higher for companies that are managed service providers, because the trend we're seeing now is attacks are going toward the managed service providers because they can get more bang for their buck. An example of that would be a managed service provider providing service to doctors' offices or what have you. And the doctor's offices actually become victims. Their computers, all of them, because they're tied to the managed service provider, become frozen. But the bad actors don't want payment from the individual doctor's offices. They want payment from the managed service provider who's got the big bucks, right, and the most vested. So they'll put high dollar amount bounties, if you will. The average downtime of lost service, if you have a ransomware attack, is 15 days. Think about how that translates to dollar loss for your organization. It's not, and that's just average. It can be longer or shorter. And there's a trend towards exfiltration of data for extortion. What that means simply is that once they're in, they don't just wreak havoc and freeze your system up and ask for money. They take data, sometimes sensitive data, that may be only sensitive to you and your clients, but they hold it as further bait, if you will, to get you to pay. And if you don't pay, they put it on the internet. And I have a group of guys and gals that do search the dark web looking for this information, and we actually try to proactively notify companies when we do find those things to assist them. Nasty stuff. How they're getting in, again, a lot of times it's through some of the same methods that you saw in the business email compromise. It's clicking on unprotected documents, Excel documents that run macros. Remote desktop connections. A lot of businesses have access back to their servers via remote access, but not having proper configuration or running, unpatched third-party software, that kind of thing. So, how you protect yourself though with this is not easy. I would say that it's almost impossible to become completely inoculated against this kind of attack. But there are some things that you can do to kind of minimize the impact if that does happen to you. And one would be to infect your one would be to actually, I talk about this in a cyber hygiene section lastly, but it's actually called just backing up your systems and keeping them segregated. We call it air gapped, keeping your backups separate from your network, because if they're connected, if your backups are connected to your network and you're infected, well, then your backups are infected too. So that's one of the main pieces of advice we give. We want you to isolate your infected system. So if you see something like this on your screen, we want you to isolate that. What that means is basically disconnecting from the network physically, if it's via Ethernet cable and Wi-Fi. We ask that you don't power that terminal or that endpoint down, because if you do, it makes it more difficult in some cases impossible for us from a forensic point of view to come in and get forensics off that system that once it's been completely powered down. But you can still disconnect it from your network, and that's recommended. Of course, notify law enforcement, and we work hand in hand with third-party remediation companies that actually do come in and do the remediation. I don't want to misrepresent what we in law enforcement do. We're not there to fix up your systems and kind of get you back and running. We're there actually to find the bad guy or the people that did this. I mean, we'll help triage your problem, but we're not there to actually do a full remediation like a company that's that would be hired independently to do. Then the last point I want to bring up is, do you pay the ransom? I get that question probably most often. The official government response is we recommend that you do not pay the ransom. However, we understand it's a business decision. And that's a decision that your company would make. I know that if you have no other way to get back online and your data is being held hostage, it's tempting to do that. But please note that you're dealing with criminals, okay? And there's no guarantee that you get the money back. And there's no guarantee. In fact, in many cases, you're more susceptible then to be attacked again. So there's pros and cons to doing it as official government response. We don't recommend it. You also perpetuate the problem when you pay it. By paying a ransom, you encourage the activity of these actors to continue doing this across the board. So we understand the decision's business, but we want you to know some of the pitfalls. All right, let's move into some tips that are going to be kind of general. Some of them you're going to be like, oh, I've heard this before, but there's a reason why I'm saying this again, because it's not the complicated cyber hacks that are out there. It's these simple things that are happening that really are basic cyber hygiene things you should be doing in your personal life and in your work life to make certain you're not exposing yourself or your company. And when I say use strong passwords, I mean use strong passwords. And it's amazing how many people reuse passwords. And I explained earlier why that's a bad idea because of data breaches and whatnot. But use a combination of letters, numbers, characters, uppercase, lowercase. I like to personally use passphrases. I'll have a phrase in my head. So, I love the Dalton Rotary Club very much. 2020 exclamation point. I can take that phrase and I can use the first character of each word in that phrase as my password. And it's easier to remember that than it is a long string of, random, the numbers. And it still gives you the protection that you need. I just want to show, I'm not going to show the whole video, but I have a great video from Jimmy Kimmel here that shows really how bad America is at using passwords.
Truth of the matter is, we need to do a better job of protecting ourselves. The most popular password in the United States is password 123. And as long as that's the case, we're vulnerable. So today we sent a camera out on Hollywood Boulevard to help people by asking them to tell us their password. And this is how that went.
We're talking about cybersecurity today and how safe people's passwords are. What is one of your online passwords currently?
It is my dog's name and the year I graduated from high school.
Oh, what kind of dog do you have?
I have a Chihuahua Papillon.
And what's his name?
Jameson.
Jameson. And where'd you go to school?
I went to school back in Greensburg, Pennsylvania.
What school?
Hempfield Area Senior High School.
Oh, when did you graduate?
In 2009.
Oh, great.
It's like my cat's name and then just like a random number.
Okay.
But,
Have you had this cat for a while?
yeah, she's my childhood pet.
Aw. And what's her name?
Her name is Jolie.
Jolie.
Mm-hmm.
So like a password of yours would be Jolie and then a number.
Yeah.
Like number 1?
Like my birthday.
Oh, when is your birthday?
June 12th.
Oh, nice. And what year were you born?
95.
Oh, great.
Mm-hmm.
So Jolie, 6/12/95.
Yes.
Got it.
So you mean to give my password right now? No, I cannot do that.
But we all want to know what it is so we can tell you if it's strong or not.
Oh my goodness. Let me think. Okay, one is Tel Aviv. Yeah. 468, and then Israel. It's only 3, but it's for me it's strong enough.
So that's that's what we're dealing with, folks. So please use good passwords. Don't reuse them. If you find yourself on a website, avoid password autofill. I'm not talking about using things like Dashlane or 1Password that I'm talking about browser-filled passwords. It's not a good idea when you have browser-filled password to enter them and store them there, because they're vulnerable to be captured. Encryption is very easy to do. It sounds complicated maybe to a novice, but you can go into your, if you have a Mac or Windows, you can actually go into your systems and easily encrypt your passwords. You can do it on your iPhone. You can encrypt your backups. Anytime you're given the opportunity to encrypt something, it's a good idea to do that in case your laptop or something is lost. It's more secure. Patching, we have a great story of a criminal that we arrested overseas, and we asked him, how do you target people? What do you do to target, how do you pick your victims? And he said every morning he gets a cup of coffee and he pulls out the newspaper and he looks to see all the patches that happen, or in the security bulletins and Microsoft patches that come out on certain dates. And those are the people. That's what he's going for. He's going for the patches because he knows people aren't patching their systems. They're not updating their computers. They're not updating their networks appropriately. And so he knows what the vulnerabilities are because the patches are there. And so please update. Use two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication. Again, things like Google, your bank accounts should all have these things where you're asked to do not only a password, but something is sent to you to verify it's you. And this is now becoming more and more commonplace, and it's just highly recommended that you do that. Yes, there's certain ways around that, but the trouble is worth more than the effort sometimes. And so as a general rule, we just like to encourage folks to continue using this. I mentioned this before, backup. It's like location in real estate. You got to do backups, and you got to do it properly. Your backups. If you have a home external drive at your house, disconnect that cable from your computer after you do a backup so it's not touching your network. Same is true at work. We call it air gapping, keeping it separate. Storage, I love this. Remember that Seinfeld episode where George says he needs everything in his wallet, including that 1979 dry cleaning receipt? No, he doesn't need that. And neither do you need your files that are on your desktop that are there from 3 or 4 years ago that have maybe personal information on it or identifiable information of customers. Clean and erase, get rid of stuff. Be careful don't be click happy. These pop-ups that occur, these drive-by, these things can actually be malicious software. You want to look for in your browser for that little green button, that little green lock, HTTPS. The S is a sign that it's a secure link, secure connection. If it's not there, especially if you're doing financial transactions, be obviously very cautious. Use a VPN. We like people to use VPNs because they're basically an encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. They're not perfect, but they offer a layer of protection. So if you're at the airport, you're at a hotel, you're giving yourself another layer of protection that would make it way more difficult for someone to actually intercept your communications or your network. I mentioned this before, but this is a funny little clip. It basically shows a guy here that, in this corner we have firewalls, encryption, antivirus, and in this corner we have Dave. Human error is the source of most of the problems that we have. And again, it comes down to training and education and doing it properly and regularly. With that, I'm going to leave this here for a second. You can take a picture of that with your phone if you'd like. It has my contact information, and our main office number is 24 hours. You can reach me that's my desk number. That's my email address. And if you have any questions, you'd like follow up, or I wasn't clear about something, we can certainly talk offline. I will let me take this off of stop sharing and see your faces again here. There we go. With that, I'll leave it to any questions that you may have.
Well, we're going to open it up to any questions. If anybody has any questions for Mark, just unmute your phone and ask the question.
It was that good.
Yeah, Bill Blackman asked, "Do you have a Facebook or LinkedIn account?"
I do have. The only social media I have is LinkedIn. So Marc Debrody's on LinkedIn. I'm the only Marc Debrody on LinkedIn. I failed to say I'm home here. I'm actually at my house with, I have a 17-year-old, I have a senior in high school, a freshman in high school, and a seventh grader, and a wife working from home. So this has tested our internet bandwidth pretty significantly today to do this call. I'm amazed amazed we didn't drop this call at any point, but they have all the social media. I because of what I do, I tend to be a little more, although I have LinkedIn, that's fairly recent. So, but yes, that's how you can connect with me as well, through LinkedIn.
Any other questions for Mark? I've got a few, Mark, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'll give everybody else a chance first. Well, I just want to make a quick comment. I do this for a living, cybersecurity, and we see this every day. And the big things, you covered the big things. It's basically the multi-factor authentication, patching, data recovery, and so forth. So that's all stuff that we have to that I preach every day.
Mm-hmm.
But do you see a lot, Mark, in SIM swapping, doing the multi-factor authentication?
I didn't mention it, but I alluded to the fact that that's still, it's not, multi-factor authentication is not an end all. I mean, and that is one of the vulnerabilities you just brought up, is SIM swapping. That's basically, convincing the carrier that your phone's not your phone, and having your cell phone basically cloned for someone else. We haven't seen a lot of that, Ricky. That is reported. I think it's reported more because it's kind of a sexy thing to say, SIM swapping. Oh, there's SIM swapping, but we don't see a lot of it. And so there are ways that you can help minimize that. I know with Verizon, for example, you can call Verizon and you can request that they put restrictions on your account to not allow changes to your account. That would, like a SIM swap would require a change, and they would have to verify that the caller is actually you. And there's ways to increase your security settings in your with your cell phone carrier to minimize that. But to answer your question, no, we don't see a lot of that, but it does happen.
I've heard of it. And I've not seen it in practice, so that's why.
I mean, there's even what they're saying now, where the artificial intelligence, AI spoofing. I mean, there's who knows where crime's going to go in the future, but it's actually the tried and true old email method is the way that people are doing it. So
yeah, there's too many people giving up their username and password.
Yeah.
The easy way. Any other questions for Mark? Smitty, you're mute. I see him talking. Smitty, you're on mute. I see you talking, but you're on mute.
Hey, Mark, this is Smitty Barnett. I wanted just to reach out to you and thank you for taking the time to speak with us today about this. I will tell you personally, if you look at the word technology, my photograph is nowhere in the spectrum. And having someone that is very, adept to this is enlightening. I was a victim of a phishing episode a couple of years ago. And so I know that it can cause a lot of havoc for you. And yes. I appreciate what you had to say today.
Yes, I'm sorry that happened to you, and thank you. Be aware that these things tend to be cyclical with the season as well. So obviously, the COVID is still a season, but it ramped up in the earlier part of this year. These type of phishing attacks, but we also see these things happen every year around the holidays. So Thanksgiving, Christmas, when things are online orders start to happen a lot. We see a lot of brand spoofing. What that means is you'll see an email that appears to come from Amazon or UPS, and the chances of you having clicked on Amazon to buy something is pretty great, right? So they know that, and they send emails that appear to be from Amazon that encourage you to link or sign in and click to access your account, to do a whole host of things, to access email, whatever it may be. So you have to, the biggest thing I tell folks is to be patient and look at the email. And we call it a hasty search. When you if you go to a gas station at 1 a.m, which most people may not do, but if you go late at night, I get out of my car and I look around to make certain that there's nobody, right on me, right? Especially if I'm in an area that may be a little bit, sketchy. So The same is true with email. You have to look at all your email, especially ones that involve financial, just that a little more close.
I don't know if this is not the same thing, but I did want to ask this question too. In regards, you mentioned gas stations. So you take your credit card or whatever you're using, you slide it in, and you pull it out. And what's this about skimming?
I have a whole, I didn't put it in here for time purposes, but there's a skimming presentation, and we actually work those cases too. It's actually fairly prevalent. It's a great question, and I'll address it really briefly. Skimming is basically stealing your credit card information off the gas pump without you even knowing about it. And you will never know what happened until you actually see a charge or see see something on your credit card statement. The criminals actually go into the gas pumps. They open them up. I mean, the locks on there are kind of like luggage keys in the criminal world. You can get them on nefarious websites. They go in, they unlock the gas pumps. Oftentimes, the gas pumps they choose specific locations. Many times they're near highways, all up and down the I-75, 85 corridor, off of interstates, close by interstates, because they can just hit them, right in a row. They'll go into the gas pump and they put a device, actually embeds it on the line of the gas pump that steals the data that transmits once you put your card in, and it stores it on the skimming device, a little cigarette pack sized device that the bad actors then can come back and via Bluetooth technology just drive right next to their pump where they installed it and download over the airways without having to go back in the gas pump. They just download all the information. And there's actually some that are cellular, which is even scarier because they can do it from anywhere in the world. So the bottom line is you're not going to know if that's inside the pump when you're using the pump. So what I recommend is a couple of things. One, don't use a debit card ever at the gas pump. Ever. My son has a debit card. I tell him don't use the debit card. If you have to use a debit card, choose the credit card feature on that prompts you when you put your card in. Because if you're using a debit card at a gas pump and you use debit, you have to then put your PIN number in there. Once you put your PIN number in, if that pump is compromised, you have basically given them not only your data off your card that you inserted, but you've also given them your PIN number so they can effectively go to your bank account and withdraw, cash. So the credit card gives you way more protection, and is Clark Howard recommended as well for those of you that watch Clark. So please follow that as a way of precaution. And we actively go out and we find them quite regularly. We have devices that can detect them. And we've actually made some arrests on them. And yeah, it's a tough one, but thanks for your question.
Did have one other question from Alex Brown that said, do you encourage folks to buy identity theft insurance?
Well, since I mentioned Clark Howard, I don't work for Clark, but if you listen to him, he would say no. But there are some companies. I'm not going to go through all these companies offer. I know there's several that offer various different plans. Do for identity protection is to freeze your credit. Okay, if your credit's frozen, you can't get access to it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You can't even. There's not a purpose for monitoring it because your credit's frozen. The only way that you can unfreeze it is if you do it yourself, and that would only be if you need to get a loan, apply for a credit card, that type of thing. But when your accounts are all frozen with all three bureaus, you need to do it with all three bureaus. It's very easy to do, and I think it's now free. It used to be a few bucks. You can assure yourself that no one's going to have access to your to establish credit in your name, okay, or do things like that. And whether you find value in the other parts of what they offer is going to be purely a decision that is personal. I guess because I'm in the business, I know what to do, so I'm not particularly fond of paying for that service. But if your credit is frozen, that's a great start, and that's just my 2 cents. That's not the official government answer, by the way.
I think we got time for another question or two. Anybody else before we close up? Well, Mark, thank you so much. I'll give a plug for the Secret Service. You guys do a great job. Anytime I have financial crimes or cybersecurity crimes, I start with you guys because you guys do such a wonderful job compared to some of the other federal agencies. So I always give Secret Service a plug for that. So thank you for your service. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
And we'll just we'll just close it. The board is discussing a in-person meeting soon. Of course, it's going to be reduced, folks, in precautions. We're still discussing, so more details to follow. Thank you to everyone who participated in the survey. That gave us great feedback and helped our board of directors to drive us in a direction we need to in this unusual year. I'm going to end with, and also, Mark, that was encouraging about the Interact. So we do sponsor an Interact club, and
it's awesome.
It just helps us stay encouraged that it's doing good in the community. So that's
great.
Awesome.
That's a great organization, and I'm glad you guys are partnering. The Rotary continues to partner with that. That's what got me hooked. So thanks.
Yeah. And that's all it takes. Just to get one person into the field of their choice. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yes.
Thank you, Mark and Ricky.
Let's end with a four-way test, and I'll show my screen here. Is the four-way test? Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all who concerned? And with that, we'll see you guys next meeting. Thanks so much.